accurate and fair reporting. Not only from Batanes to Tawi-Tawi, but also abroad. Detailed and timely stories relevant to people all over the world. Catch all of these at Net25, your reliable source of news, entertainment, and technology updates.
We know that this is a scary time for all of us.
The coronavirus is changing the world.
Changing our lives.
So please, take care of yourself.
Keep your distance.
Wash your hands.
And if you can, stay at home.
We at DW
are here for you.
We are working tirelessly to keep you informed on all of our platforms.
We're all in this together.
And together,
we'll make it through.
Stay safe, everybody.
Stay safe.
Stay safe.
Stay safe.
Please, stay safe.
Makinig kayo sa aking payo. Ito ang tandaan ninyo. Huwag sasaksi sa mga bagay na hindi naman totoo. Huwag magbibitiw ng mga salita kung hindi ka naman sigurado. Lalo't kung nakasalalay dito ang dangal ng isang tao. At sa mga nakikita sa internet, huwag agad maniniwala. Mag-ingat upang hindi kayo madaya. Dahil alam naman natin, hindi lahat ng balita ay tama. Maging matalino, huwag magpapaloko. Mag-ingat sa pagpo-post, pagla-like, pag-share ng kung ano-ano. Dahil baka mamaya, hindi mo na namamalayan, isa ka na pala sa mga tao nagkakalat ng maling kwento.
Hello, I'm Alma Angeles. We're moving to the next stage of the pandemic, and as the world resets to the new normal, we find ourselves seeking the right balance between health and livelihood, constantly adjusting the boundaries between liberty and responsibility. On tonight's headlines. The Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, or PHIVOLCS, has recorded 234 aftershocks as of 8 a.m. on Wednesday, or within 24 hours, since the magnitude 6.6 quake jolted Masbate. U.S. Democrats nominated Joe Biden as their 2020 presidential candidate, offering the Washington veteran as a man of courage who would sweep away the chaos of 4 years under President Trump. And Australia's leader calls for coronavirus immunizations to be mandatory, wading into ethical and safety debates raging around the world as the race to develop a vaccine picks up pace. And the RIMPAC, or Rim of the Pacific 2020, kicks off in Hawaii amid the COVID-19 pandemic. First, the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, or PHIVOLCS, has recorded 234 aftershocks as of 8 a.m. on Wednesday, or that is within 24 hours since the magnitude 6.6 quake jolted Masbate. PHIVOLCS Director Renato Solidum Jr. said these aftershocks range from magnitudes 1.6 to 5.2. On Tuesday, a magnitude 6.6 earthquake jolted the province of Masbate, with the epicenter recorded 7 kilometers southeast of the municipality of Catayngan. According to Mr. Solidum, this earthquake was caused by the movement of the Masbate segment of the Philippine Fault Zone. He said small to moderate earthquakes have been recorded along the fault in Masbate segment, but the last strong earthquake along the fault with a magnitude 6.2 happened on February 15, 2003, adding that small to medium earthquakes are those below magnitude 6. In an interview with the Philippine News Agency, Mr. Solidum said the public needs to be prepared for the occurrence of strong earthquakes, emphasizing that it could happen even during the pandemic. He also said that earthquakes highlight the importance of ensuring building and infrastructure resistance to shaking. Key factors are the right decision or right design given hazards of an area, right materials, and right workmanship. He also said that FIVOX would monitor and see whether this earthquake has an effect on active volcanoes within the vicinity of Masbate. He said that Mayon and Bulusan volcanoes are in abnormal level, alert level 1, prior to the earthquake. Two large and shallow earthquakes struck off Indonesia's Sumatra Island early on Wednesday, according to the U.S. Geological Survey. However, no tsunami warning was issued and there were no immediate reports of casualties or major damage. Now, frightened residents fled their homes when the twin offshore quakes rocked Bengkulu City on Sumatra's western coast. The area was hit by a string of aftershocks. According to Indonesia's Meteorology, Climatology, and Geophysics Agency, the quakes of magnitude 6.8 and 6.9 struck within 6 minutes of one another from 5:23 a.m. local time at a depth of between 22 and 26 kilometers, respectively. Shallower quakes tend to cause more damage than deeper ones, but the Indian Ocean Tsunami Warning and Mitigation System said there was no threat to countries in the Indian Ocean. The USGS added there was a low likelihood of casualties and damage. The Southeast Asian archipelago experiences frequent seismic and volcanic activity due to its position on the Pacific Ring of Fire where tectonic plates collide. In 2018, a 7.5 magnitude quake and subsequent tsunami on Sulawesi Island left more than 4,300 people dead or missing. A devastating 9.1 magnitude quake struck off the coast of Sumatra in 2004, triggering a tsunami that killed 220,000 throughout the region, including around 170,000 in Indonesia. Meanwhile, Indonesia's Mount Sinabung in Sumatra Island erupted again on Wednesday. The volcano on Sumatra Island has been rumbling since 2010, and it saw a deadly eruption back in 2016. Activity has picked up this month with several eruptions. Last August 13, Indonesia's Mount Sinabung erupted again with a string of blasts that sent plumes of ash 2 kilometers into the sky. Authorities issued a warning to planes flying near the volcano. Mount Sinabung roared back to life in 2010 for the first time in 400 years. After another period of inactivity, it erupted once more in 2013 and has remained highly active since. In 2016, 7 people died in one of Sinabung's eruptions, while a 2014 eruption killed 16. Meanwhile, continuous rainfall has engulfed streets and displaced residents in southwestern China's Sichuan province, with soldiers evacuating tens of thousands of people from rising floods. Take a look. Now, the floods in the mountainous southwest China have washed away roads. Authorities are warning Wednesday that the giant Three Gorges Dam was facing the largest flood peak in its history. Around 1,020 people had been stranded in Fengzhou, suffering food and water shortages after floodwaters cut off road traffic, according to Xinhua. More than 100,000 people have been evacuated as the cities of Ya'an and Lishan were hit by floods. Elsewhere in Sichuan, 21 vehicles fell into a large hole caused by a collapsed road early on Wednesday, although the state-run Global Times said there were no injuries. Xinhua newspaper said floodwaters were expected to hit the downstream metropolis of Chongqing later this week. The Hong Kong Observatory has downgraded the typhoon signal of Typhoon Higos from number 8 to number 3 as the typhoon moves away from the city. Typhoon signal number 8, issued at 7:40 a.m. local time, was replaced by strong wind signal number 3 at 11:10 a.m. Now, during the storm, the 1823 government call center and the Leisure Cultural Services Department received 48 and 5 reports of fallen trees, while the Drainage Services Department confirmed 2 flooding cases. The hospital authority said 7 people sought medical treatment at public hospitals during the typhoon period. The weather forecasters had earlier warned of a storm surge threatening low-lying areas of Hong Kong with flooding or a backflow of seawater by morning. High seas with swells were also expected. Meanwhile, the World Meteorological Organization said all indications suggest that the 130 degrees Fahrenheit reading in California's Death Valley is legitimate. The development comes after the weather station at Furnace Creek in the valley reported a temperature of 54.4 degrees Celsius, which is 130 degrees Fahrenheit. Take a look.
The weather station at Furnace Creek in Death Valley, California, reported a temperature of 54.4 degrees Celsius, which is 130 degrees Fahrenheit on Sunday, the 16th of August. If validated, it would be the highest temperature on Earth since 1931 and the third hottest temperature ever recorded on the planet. The National Weather Service in Las Vegas, which covers the Death Valley area, tweeted overnight, "We are in the midst of a long-duration extreme heat event. Another run at 130 degrees Fahrenheit plus temperatures in Death Valley remains possible." July was the hottest July on record for the Northern Hemisphere, and the Arctic sea ice was the lowest on record. The January to July period, the 7-month period, was the second warmest such period on record.
According to the WMO, the hottest temperature ever recorded was also in Death Valley, reaching 56.7 degrees Celsius or 134.06 degrees Fahrenheit back in July of 1913. The current scorching conditions have coincided with a heat wave on America's west coast. The National Weather Service has issued numerous heat warnings, indicating that the intense and extreme heat will continue this week. Meanwhile, in the U.S., firefighters are battling more than 30 wildfires burning across California, and that includes nearly a dozen that started in the last 2 days. That is according to the officials with the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection at a Times analysis. Governor Gavin Newsom declared a statewide emergency in order to help California respond to the fires burning across the state amid an extreme heat wave. Let's listen in.
I need to tell all of you what we're experiencing here as a state as it relates to this oppressive heat wave and these rather extraordinary weather conditions that all of us are struggling through, many of us suffering through. Impact not just here in the state of California, but the impact being felt all across the west coast of the United States. This weather has included thousands, quite literally thousands of dry lightning strikes that have sparked fires throughout the state of California. We've seen wind gusts in Santa Cruz Mountains north of 74 miles per hour, record temperatures that we've experienced, again, not just here in the state of California, but arguably the hottest temperatures we've seen over an extended period of time in close to 70 years on the west coast of the United States, including the headlines that are being garnered around the world with our own Death Valley that may have recorded the hottest temperature in modern recording, period, historically. Some have argued, at least in the last 90 years, but you get the point. 130-degree heat in Death Valley, California yesterday. We are all experiencing rather extraordinary conditions. Those conditions have precipitated, as I said, in a number of new fires in the state of California. Of course, times like these also have precipitated in pressure on our energy supply across the West, but particularly here in the state of California. It has put pressure that has created some temporary service interruptions that began on Friday, that moved into Saturday, were substantially mitigated on Sunday, but are very likely to continue today, Tuesday, and likely through Wednesday evening.
Now, crews battled fires that burned more than 50,000 acres across 7 counties in Northern California and the Central Valley. Firefighters in Northern California also responded to the LNU a lighting complex where fires had burned more than 32,000 acres by Tuesday night. The incident includes 5 fires in Napa County and 2 fires in Sonoma County. Firefighters are also battling flames amid an intense heat wave that began late last week and has set record high temperatures across California. On Sunday, the mercury in Death Valley reached 130 degrees, possibly the highest mercury reading on Earth in almost 90 years. Australia has secured access to a promising potential coronavirus vaccine and will both manufacture it and offer free doses to the population. That is according to the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison. Australia has reached a deal with Swedish-British pharmaceutical company AstraZeneca to receive the COVID-19 vaccine it is developing with Oxford University. Take a look.
We're here today to announce that we've signed a letter of intent with AstraZeneca, which will enable to Australia to access, should it be successful, the vaccine for COVID-19 here in Australia, manufactured here in Australia, distributed free to 25 million Australians in the event that those trials prove successful. There are around 160 different vaccine projects around the world today. Some of those are well advanced, like the AstraZeneca proposal, and that they're turning up with the University of Oxford. Others are still on their way and looking good too, like in the University of Queensland. There are many others, and cutting corners, there won't be any undue haste here. There will be the appropriate controls and protections that are put in place. I'm advised that we'll need about a 95% vaccination rate across the country. Now, that is the normal target range for when you're having a vaccination program, and we'll be seeking to ensure that that is widely implemented.
He also stressed that any potential vaccine would be required to pass all trials and be as safe as any other existing immunizations in Australia before being administered. Nations are scrambling to develop an immunization or gain access to one of a handful of contenders in the final stages of clinical trials. Upping the ante, Russia on August 11 said it had developed the world's first vaccine offering sustainable immunity and was in the final stage of human testing. A brand new organization whose primary focus is public health protection and infectious disease capability is being established by the government. Joining us live from the United Kingdom is Graham Thomas. Hello, Graham.
Good afternoon, Alma.
Hi.
You're absolutely right. The British Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, has announced a shake-up of public health policy with a new institute to focus on infectious diseases in the wake of the devastating coronavirus outbreak. Let's listen in.
To give ourselves the best chance of beating this virus and of spotting and tackling other external health threats now and in the future, we need to bring together the science and the scale into one coherent whole. So today I'm announcing that we're forming a new organization, the National Institute for Health Protection. The National Institute for Health Protection will have a single and relentless mission: protecting people from external threats to this country's health. External threats like biological weapons, pandemics, and of course, infectious diseases of all kinds. My single biggest fear is a novel flu or another major health alert hitting us right now in the middle of this battle against coronavirus. Even once this crisis has passed, and it will pass, we need a disease control infrastructure that gives us the permanent standing capacity to respond as a nation and the ability to scale up at pace.
More than 41,000 people have confirmed with COVID-19 have died in the worst toll in Europe, and the country is still struggling to implement an effective test and tracing system. The government is scrapping Public Health England, PHE, the government agency with responsibility for health emergencies in England, as well as issues such as smoking and obesity. In its place, the new National Institute for Health Protection will focus on infectious diseases and external threats, including from biological weapons. It will deal with emergencies, local outbreaks testing, and contact tracing, as well as coordinating analysis, surveillance, and research. Health Secretary Matt Hancock said the Institute will start work immediately as the changes couldn't wait. Just as Britain worked to prepare for infrequent yet devastating risks such as terrorism and financial shocks, he said it must also be ready and alert to challenges such as pandemics. Critics accused the government of making Public Health England the scapegoat for its handling of the pandemic, which is notably saw a lack of testing and protecting equipment in the early weeks. This isn't a worked out plan for public health. It's a desperate, politicized attempt to shift blame, said John Ashworth, health spokesman for the main opposition Labour Party. The government said preventing ill health and tackling health inequalities was still a top priority and is consulting on how best to share out PHE's responsibility for those. While directly replacing PHE, the new institute will work UK-wide and with the devolved administrations in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Back to you, Alma.
All right. So, Graham, how will this new institute or organization differ from the Public Health England? Is that right? Public Health England?
My understanding.
Yes.
Yes, Alma. My understanding is the NIHP will be a new organization whose primary focus is to ensure the whole of the UK have the best capability to control infectious disease and deal with pandemics or health protection crises. It also will take on existing UK-wide responsibilities, and it will work with local government, the NHS, and more importantly, the devolved administration in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland to ensure we have the strongest possible health protection system for the whole of the UK. It will build on its existing strong working relationships between the four nations of the UK, including on data sharing, alert levels, and border issues. It will directly report to the Health and Care Secretary and support the clinical leadership of the four UK Chief Medical Officers. And it will ensure that the UK will be in an even stronger position to deal with and further recover from the current COVID-19 pandemic, the strongest possible position to meet the health protection challenges over the coming winter and be more resilient to respond to future pandemics.
All right. Thank you very much, Graham, for your updates there. In the United Kingdom, you stay safe, stay healthy always. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Alma. This is Graham Thomas for EBC News in the United Kingdom. We live in interesting times.
Eagle News, we'll be right back.
The search for the best continues. Tagisan ng Galing Part 2 is now accepting audition entries. Kung ikaw ay 21 to 59 years old at may angking galing sa pagsayaw, mapasolo, duo o grupo man, magpadala na ng audition entry. Narito ang mga guidelines. Para makapagpasa ng entry sa dancing category, contact Shing at 0995-880-8004. Ito na ang pagkakataon mo para maging tagisan ng galing grand winner at manalo ng 2 million pesos. Para sa karagdagang impormasyon, i-like ang Tagisan ng Galing Facebook page. Kaya sali na!
U.S. Democrats nominated Joe Biden as their 2020 presidential candidate, offering the Washington veteran as a man of courage who would sweep away the chaos of 4 years of under President Trump. Viewers tuning in to day 2 of the 4-day Democratic National Convention saw presenters affirm Biden's character and leadership while drawing a sharp contrast with the brash Republicans scrambling to remain in the White House after November's election. Take a look.
I know that if we entrust this nation to Joe, he will do for your family what he did for ours. Bring us together and make us whole. Carry us forward in our time of need. Keep the promise of America for all of us.
Just one thing never changes: his determination to deny responsibility and shift the blame. The buck never stops there. Now you have to decide whether to renew his contract or hire someone else. If you want a president who defines the job as spending hours a day watching TV and zapping people on social media, he's your man.
Well, thank you very, very much. From the bottom of my heart, thank you all. It means the world to me and my family, and I'll see you on Thursday. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. Hey, guys.
RIMPAC, or Rim of the Pacific, is dubbed as the world's largest maritime exercise, which takes place every 2 years in the Hawaiian Islands. Now, one of the countries participating is Japan, which sent one of its vessels to the Central Pacific, even as the world continues to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. Joining us live is Dennis Liu. Hello, Dennis.
Hello, Alma. Good evening to you and to all our televiewers. Japan takes part in RIMPAC 2020 in Hawaii amid COVID-19 pandemic. The Atago-class destroyer Ashigara is the latest in a line of warships by the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force, with the privilege of participating in the Rim of the Pacific, or RIMPAC. Dubbed as the world's largest maritime exercise, RIMPAC is held every 2 years in the waters around the Hawaiian Islands. Built by Mitsubishi Heavy Industries Limited, the Ashigara was commissioned on March 13, 2008. She stretches 170 meters in length and has a displacement of 10,000 plus tons with a full load. Her engines consist of 4 Ishikawajima Harima and General Electric gas turbines, which can generate speeds of up to 30 knots or 56 kilometers an hour. As for distance, the ship can go as far as 4,500 nautical miles at 20 knots. As for armaments, she has a variety of weapon systems ranging from torpedoes to missiles that can stop a submarine, aircraft, and even incoming ballistic missiles. The Ashigara is just one of 22 surface ships from 10 nations participating in this year's RIMPAC exercise, which began on August 17th and will end on August 31st. Compared to previous years, however, RIMPAC 2020 has been scaled down to training only on sea-based operations due to the ongoing COVID-19 outbreak in Hawaii and other parts of the world. There will be no RIMPAC-related training or social activities on land. Nevertheless, the Ashigara is no stranger to Hawaii. She first visited Pearl Harbor in 2008 and again in 2015. She has also served very important roles, such as responding to the massive earthquake and tsunami that devastated eastern Japan in March 2011 and more recently in joining the US and other nations in preventing aggression by certain countries within the Pacific region. That's the latest for now. Back to you, Alma.
Thank you, Dennis, for your updates there in RIMPAC. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Alma, reporting live from Tokyo, Japan. This is Dennis Liu. We live in interesting times.
Now, even Singapore took part in the RIMPAC 2020 despite the COVID-19 pandemic. For more, here is Ralph Wandolph Empire reporting from our ASEAN Bureau. Hello, Ralph.
Good evening, Alma, and to all of those watching us tonight. Can you hear me, Alma?
Yes, I can hear you, but I can't see you.
Oh, sorry about that. Let me just fix the camera 1 second. Can you see me now?
Okay, maybe, can we get him back? Okay, we'll get you back, Ralph, in a few seconds. We'll head on to the Royal Canadian Navy, which is now joining the RIMPAC 2020 amid also the COVID-19 pandemic. Here's Thomas I. Likeness.
2 Canadian Navy frigates are among the foreign ships joining the U.S. Navy in the Rim of the Pacific military exercise off the coast of Hawaii. The HMCS Regina and the HMCS Winnipeg will take part in the biennial event, which got underway Monday. The United States Navy organizes and hosts RIMPAC every 2 years. It had originally anticipated this year to be even larger than in 2018. However, because of the pandemic, the United States Navy scaled down this year's version. Navy Vice Admiral and RIMPAC 2020 Commander Scott Kahn says safety has been a top priority in planning for this exercise.
I want to say up front that everything we are doing for RIMPAC has been carefully and deliberately planned to ensure everyone's safety. As you may know, RIMPAC 2020 will be an at-sea only exercise due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. This construct was developed to ensure the safety of the citizens of Hawaii and all the sailors embarked on the ships participating this year.
To minimize international travel and person-to-person contact, the land and air components of the exercise have been canceled. As well, Kahn says there will be fewer support staff with limited activity ashore at Joint Base Pearl Harbor, Hickam.
I can speak on everyone's behalf in saying that we will certainly miss the interactions we typically have with the community. However, we are not going to be able to do that this year. The health and safety of the citizens of Hawaii, as well as our U.S. and partner nation sailors, is our priority.
Kahn says both Canadian ships will conduct missile firings, among other tasks. Winnipeg will fire the Evolved Sea Sparrow missiles and torpedoes. The Regina will fire a harpoon to sink a target as part of a larger exercise with multiple units called a sinking exercise, or SINKEX.
This year, we will focus solely on warfighting in the maritime domain, to include anti-surface warfare, anti-submarine warfare, and maritime interdiction operations, as well as some robust live fire events. During all the at-sea events, all partner nations understand the importance of preserving and protecting the unique maritime environment that makes it so special. RIMPAC represents a unique opportunity to strengthen relationships and build trust.
As well as Canada and the United States, other countries participating in this scaled-down event include Australia, Brunei, France, Japan, New Zealand, South Korea, the Philippines, and Singapore. RIMPAC 2020 ends on August 31st. In the meantime, I wish you all good health. Take care of others, take care of yourselves, stay home, stay safe, and stay tuned to Eagle News for balanced and accurate coverage of the COVID-19 pandemic and other current affairs. In Edmonton, Canada, Thomas I. Likeness, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
One country that is also participating in the RIMPAC is Singapore. Joining us live from our ASEAN Bureau is Ralph Wandolph Empire. Hello, Ralph.
Hi there, Alma. I'm back. Can you see me now?
Yes, I can see you and I can hear you well. Very good.
Awesome. All right, so the Republic of Singapore Navy's formidable class frigate, the RSS Supreme, recently arrived at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, in order to participate in Exercise Rim of the Pacific, or RIMPAC, from August 17 to August 31. RIMPAC is considered as the world's largest maritime exercise held every 2 years around the waters of the Hawaiian Islands. This massive training event is designed to help countries in the Pacific and in other parts of the world foster and sustain cooperative relationships, critical to ensuring the safety of sea lanes and security in support of a free and open Indian and Pacific Ocean regions. The exercise is a unique training platform designed to enhance interoperability and strategic maritime partnerships. However, due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, RIMPAC 2020 has been scaled down to training at sea only. There will be no training or social events on land. Participating forces from the US and other countries will remain in their respective vessels for the duration of the exercise. Ships will occasionally dock at Joint Base Pearl Harbor, Hickam, but only for fuel, food, and other supplies. RIMPAC 2020 is the 27th exercise in the series that began in 1971. The Singapore Navy will be participating in the exercise for the 7th time, and this year, it will take on the role of Task Group Commander. Singapore is one of 10 nations in RIMPAC 2020. The other 9 include Australia, Brunei, Canada, France, Japan, New Zealand, the Philippines, South Korea, and the United States. At least 22 ships, 1 submarine, and more than 5,300 personnel are taking part in this training event. By comparison, during RIMPAC 2018, the exercise involved 45 ships, 5 submarines, about 200 aircraft, and 25,000 personnel from 25 countries. Back to you, Alma.
Thank you, Ralph. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your updates.
You're welcome, Alma. Reporting from ASEAN Bureau, this is Ralph of Empire Eagle News. Believe in interesting times.
And here now is Alfred Asenas on Hawaii's latest attempt to flatten the curve of COVID-19 cases. Meanwhile, the commander in charge of the RIMPAC 2020 exercise has also assured that the military can handle COVID-19 related issues without outside help. Take a look.
We've been struggling over the past maybe 4 or 5 days on whether we use a scalpel or a hammer to attack the spiking of COVID-19 on the island of Oahu. But we've chosen the scalpel for now.
We can stop this pandemic, but only if we take action as a community. This is a marathon, and we need to be vigilant. Everyone needs to do the things that we know work.
Governor David Ige approved on Tuesday the latest set of emergency orders that would put the island of Oahu to act now with no social gatherings, which is the latest attempt to flatten the recent surge of COVID-19 infections on the island, which currently stands at 4,878, or 91%, out of the total of 5,349 cases statewide. And this includes 3,387 active cases.
We just submitted to the governor a new emergency order titled Act Now, Honolulu, No Social Gatherings. Bottom line, what does this mean? The requirement is that if you can work from home, we want you to work from home.
Key changes from the previous restrictions going into effect starting Thursday, August 20th will include, but not limited to, the following. No indoor or outdoor gatherings for the next 28 days. No parties larger than 5 people. No groups larger than 5 at restaurants, which is down from 10. No groups larger than 5 at outdoor recreations and in recreational and commercial boating. No social gatherings permitted in business establishments. No groups larger than 5 at museums and movie theaters. Bars, beaches, parks, and trails remain closed. Governor David Ige also announced a change of plans for those traveling to the islands.
We had planned to begin the pre-travel testing program on September 1. I am announcing today that we are delaying the start of the pre-travel testing. It will not begin until October 1 at the earliest. We will continue to monitor the conditions here in Hawaii, as well as key markets on the mainland to determine the appropriate start date for the pre-travel testing program. We will be making that announcement in time so that the hospitality industry would have the time they need to staff up and begin to support the pre-travel testing program.
Now, the governor further reminded that the 14-day self-quarantine requirement for inter-island travel remains in place. Meanwhile, the U.S. military and counterparts from 9 partner nations are already taking part in the Rim of the Pacific, or RIMPAC, maritime exercise. During the opening remarks on Monday, RIMPAC Commander Vice Admiral Scott Kahn assured Hawaii's residents that the military community will have the capacity to address its own COVID-19 related issues. Take a look.
If needed, U.S. ships will be able to conduct COVID-19 tests at sea. Similarly, some of our partner nation ships will have testing capability. There is no plan to bring COVID-19 specimens ashore. If an emergency medical situation arises that exceeds a ship's ability to resolve, on-island military facilities have sufficient capability to medically support RIMPAC 2020. We do not plan to use any local healthcare resources.
Exercise RIMPAC 2020 will take place mostly at sea until August 31. Reporting from Honolulu, Hawaii, I'm Alfred Asenas, Eagle News. We live in interesting times. Back to you.
Thank you, Alfred. Let's look at the stories making headlines around the world. Mali's president said he had resigned to avoid bloodshed after he was detained in a military coup whose leaders pledged new elections to resolve a spiraling political crisis in the fragile West African nation. Ibrahim Boubacar Keita's government had been beset by months of protests over economic stagnation, corruption, and a brutal Islamist insurgency that has claimed thousands of lives. Now, Keita appeared calm as he appeared in a state television broadcast soon after midnight to declare the dissolution of the government and the National Assembly, and said he had no choice but to resign with immediate effect. Take a look.
À ce moment précis, tout en remerciant le peuple malien de son accompagnement au long de ces longues années, de la chaleur de son affection, nous dire ma décision de quitter mes fonctions, toutes mes fonctions à partir de ce moment, et avec toutes les conséquences de droit, la dissolution de l'Assemblée nationale et celle du gouvernement.
La bonne marche du pays.
Rebel soldiers took Keita and Prime Minister Bubu Sise into custody on Tuesday afternoon and then drove the pair to a military base on the outskirts of Bamako, which they had seized that morning. The coup's leaders appeared on television hours later to pledge a political transition and new elections within a reasonable time. Malian Air Force Deputy Chief of Staff Ismail Waig said he and his fellow officers had decided to take responsibility in front of the people and of history. Mali's neighbors warned against any unconstitutional transfer of power as the coup unfolded on Tuesday. The Economic Community of West African States, or ECOWAS, condemned the coup in a statement pledging to close land and air borders to Mali and push for sanctions against, quote, all the putschists and their partners and collaborators, unquote. In other news, a man has caused a series of motorway accidents in Berlin, injuring 6 people, including 3 seriously, in what German prosecutors described as an Islamist act. Take a look. Prosecutors said the man appears to have had an Islamist motivation, according to their current knowledge. Local media reported that the man was a 30-year-old Iraqi who had shouted Allahu Akbar when getting out of his car after hitting several vehicles around 6:30 p.m. local time on Tuesday. Berlin police said the man caused 3 accidents on the Autobahn 100 in the city's Tempelhof Schönberg district before claiming that a box in his car contained a dangerous object. However, when police opened the box using high-pressure water jets, it was found to contain nothing but tools. The driver was arrested and the motorway closed for several hours, causing significant travel disruption. German media reported that a motorcycle driver was among those injured. People with ties to Islamic extremism have committed several violent attacks in Germany in recent years. The worst was a ramming attack at a Berlin Christmas market in 2016 that killed 12. In other news, the Court of Appeals has turned down a plea by Rappler Chief Executive Officer Maria Ressa to travel abroad pending an appeal of her libel conviction before a Manila court. In a 7-page resolution dated August 18, the Appellate Court's Special 14th Division, through Associate Justice Geraldine C. Fiel Macaraig, said while the lower courts had previously allowed her to leave the country, Ressa's subsequent conviction changes her situation. The CA also said Ressa, quote, failed to show the necessity and urgency of her request to travel to the U.S. from August 23 to September 19 this year. Associate Justices Danton Busber and Carlito Calpatura concurred. The appellate court also found, quote, no sufficient evidence to justify the intention of the co-founder of Rappler to personally receive an award. The Office of the Solicitor General, the CA said, also successfully demonstrated that Ressa's intended travel is not necessary and urgent because there are other ways for her to participate in the U.S. event. The OSG earlier opposed Ressa's request to travel abroad, noting that she had voluntarily agreed to restrict her right to travel after she had posted bail for her temporary liberty. It added her conviction warrants stricter restriction against her privilege to travel abroad. Aside from her conviction, pending tax evasion charges and a second cyber libel complaint as among the circumstances that prevent her to travel abroad, the OSG said Ressa's views on the Philippine justice system make her a flight risk. Prior to her conviction on the cyber libel complaint filed by businessman Wilfredo Keng, Ressa had been previously allowed by the Manila court to leave upon posting a 100,000 peso bond. Ressa was subsequently found guilty along with former writer Reynaldo Santos Jr. on June 15, 2020 by the Manila Regional Trial Court, Branch 46, and sentenced up to 6 years imprisonment. She appealed the verdict. Okay, let's get the latest coronavirus situation in Europe. In Finland, the country has removed most EU countries from its green travel list, with only arrivals from a handful of states now able to enter the country without restrictions, according to the government announced today. Now, Finland has removed most EU countries from its green travel list, with only arrivals from a handful of states now able to enter without restrictions. Interior Minister Maria Ohisalo said Finland's border policy is the tightest in the European Union because, quote, we have wanted to preserve the relatively good virus situation in Finland. The tougher rules mean only people coming from Italy, Hungary, Slovakia, Estonia, and Lithuania will now be allowed into Finland without proving they have a valid reason for travel and self-isolating for 2 weeks. The United States government rolled out a 1.9 billion peso project to support at least 180,000 out-of-school youth across the Philippines. Under the 5-year Opportunity 2.0 Second Chance Opportunities for Out-of-School Youth project, Washington, through the United States Agency for International Development, or USAID, will partner with the Department of Education, or DepEd, and the Technical Education and Skills Development Authority, or TESDA, in providing relevant education and employability skills to the youth beneficiaries. USAID will partner with local governments in 12 cities across the country to set up youth development alliances, which will mobilize resources to help their out-of-school youth. The program will also partner with over 2,200 employers and at least 50 education or training institutions, including major hubs like Metro Manila, Metro Cebu, and Davao. The program will be implemented by the U.S.-based Education Development Center with partners Accenture, Philippine Business for Education, Catholic Relief Services, Voluntary Services Overseas, and Semio Inotech. The program, launched on Wednesday, also featured DepEd Secretary Leonor Briones and TESDA Director General Isidro La Peña. Over 500 participants from across the country joined this virtual event. The Museum of Happiness in Copenhagen invited visitors to travel through the history, politics, and geography of the emotion and to question their own well-being in a country considered to be one of the happiest in the world. Take a look.
Now, I was actually pretty happy today. I think I came from like a pretty good starting ground. But yes, I mean, it gave me like half an hour off work right now and nice company, and somehow, I suppose the idea of seeing a correlation between my well-being and happiness makes me want to be even more happy. So I suppose
in the Happiness Museum, people get a tour around happiness. So you see happiness from different angles. You see the history of happiness. You see the politics of happiness. You see the science of happiness. So it's a small museum, but about the big things in life. There's a lot of reports saying that the Nordic countries and Denmark are the happiest in the world. I like to say that perhaps we're the least unhappy countries, because I think the Nordic model is really good at reducing causes for unhappiness. That brings up the average, and that's why these countries come out on top. That's true. So when you have a society that's fairly equal, then it also means there's less to be envious of.
All right, and before we close, we leave you with a word of hope. At the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. See you again tomorrow evening. Good night. I'm Alma Angeles. We live in interesting times.